Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, the podcast where Senator Joseph Cryan talks about the latest in New Jersey's 20th Legislative District. This week's guest, Union County Commissioner Michèle Delisfort.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Cup of Joe. I am particularly excited as we celebrate Women's History Month here in March to celebrate a real trailblazer here in the Township of Union, a woman who's made her mark in the business community, in the political arena, and in so many different areas of life, mentorship, and all sorts of different areas. It is my absolute honor to introduce to you, the right title today is Commissioner. I think for most of us, it's a little bit of icon to go with it. Michèle Delisfort. Michèle, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, well,
really happy to be here.
Really excited. And today, so Michèle, just to begin with, as we celebrate Women's History Month, correct me if I'm wrong, you are the longest serving female mayor in the history of the Township of Union, correct?
Yes, I am.
All right, congratulations for that.
Thank you, sir.
Now, that's not the only thing we're going to discuss today, but I hope there's a lot of it. Yeah. So love to begin by talking. So family, how'd you end up here in the Township of Union? A little bit of background about yourself.
Okay. So family, Haitian American. My parents came from Haiti to Florida to New Jersey for opportunity, quite honestly. And they landed in Newark. My dad is a retired pediatrician. My mom is a retired nurse. They landed in Newark and, I think the year after I was born, they moved to Union. So I've been here all my life.
So they chased their American dream right here in the Township of Union.
Absolutely. And they've taught us, we had sort of that revolving door. My parents are very kind and very big on humanitarianism. And so it's always been, make sure that, of course, you take care of yourself, but you have to take care of others as well. And so that's sort of, the mantra that we grew up with.
Okay. So growing up in that kind of environment where you're taught to look out for others.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it feels like, so tell me about your education, how you ended up in terms of your career, and talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, again, raised in Union, went to parochial school, and ended up going to Mother Seton was my high school. Yes. And then I went to Rutgers, go Rutgers. Rutgers alum, did my undergrad in political science, minored in English, and then I majored, and then I did my graduate degree in urban and regional planning.
Okay. What drew you to that?
So interestingly enough, I thought I was going to go to law school, but I took a lot of urban politics courses, and one of my professors, Roland Anglin, who actually ended up at the Ford Foundation years later, he really encouraged me to consider urban planning. I had no idea what that was, and a lot of people, it's a fairly young industry, and so a lot of people just didn't know what urban planning was. So he encouraged me to take different courses. It was my junior, senior year in the urban planning field. And so I took a transportation planning course, and I took basically like a principles of planning course, and fell in love with it. And so goodbye law school, hello graduate school, here I come.
Wow. So if you don't mind me asking, talk a little more about that. I don't want to say niche, that's may not be, or you said newer type of thing. But can maybe explain to folks, what does that mean? The planning and all that goes with that. Can you talk a little bit about it? Because it's complex.
It is. Yeah. Urban planning has a myriad of concentrations, ranging from community development, economic development, urban design, redevelopment, land use planning, transportation planning, environmental planning. So it's really sort of a global view of community. I try to explain it to people in simple terms. An architect will design a building. The planner will design the landscape. And so we go into different communities, whether it's a neighborhood or urban corridors, or, we're looking at roadways, and we find out the best way to make it efficient, and then also to make it, user-friendly for all.
Here in the most congested state in the Union, right? The most densely populated state in the Union.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I don't think anybody would argue about congestion. So you take that vision and what a community might want and actually expand it and bring it to life.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Fascinating. And then you do that through the planning process and work with community leaders, that sort of thing? Absolutely.
It requires work across the board. So we're working with residents, stakeholders, business owners, elected officials, you name it. different industry makers. And we figure out exactly what the vision is. Every municipality, every community has a vision. They either want to remain the same or they want to grow, or in some cases they want to de-intensify. And so we come in and essentially plan, speak to community, engage. We do a lot of engagement to really identify what the concerns are, what are the existing conditions, and where do they want to go.
So it sounds like you have to be able to, as somebody who doesn't do that, it really sounds like one of the things you have to do is be able to listen to folks, hear them, and then be able to interpret what that needs mean for a community.
Absolutely. It's active listening. It's not, listening with the intention to speak right afterwards, right? You really have to actively listen to what people are saying and what they want, because if you don't, you're going to miss the mark.
So how long have you been doing this?
30 years.
So I know your business is successful without being too forward about it, right? And continues to grow.
Yes.
Okay. So as we celebrate women's history and we talk about different things, and we're going to move into the political discussion a little bit, there's a glass ceiling in terms of business opportunities for women, and that still exists.
Yes, it does.
I know that was a passion of yours and still is in your political life. But have you found that can you maybe talk about that a little bit, the women piece in terms of your business success?
Sure. There's ways to navigate, let's say that, right? New Jersey has a really good MWBE program, and that allows for smaller business to work on large scale projects, right? The state certification process is not arduous, right? It's fairly simple. And so that's also been a good help. We are a small business association, so that helps also. But I think relationship building is really the key. Identifying communities that we want to work in and that want us there. I think it becomes a partnership, and it just becomes seamless, and it works out really well.
Okay. MWB for the listeners?
Yeah. Oh, Minority Women Business Enterprise.
Okay. So as we celebrate women's history, can we talk about that? Can we just expand upon that a little bit? You found it to be a stepping stone for the growth of your business?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It afforded me opportunities to work at places like Port Authority, to work with, larger firms, whether they're New York based or New Jersey based, to work at New Jersey Transit. We've done, several different initiatives working in coordination with them. And so it's really, I encourage other businesses, whether it's MBEs, Minority Business Enterprises, or MWBEs, to pursue that certification.
Well, that's great to hear. Those are the kind of tips we want to expand these opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? So active listening, right, which is a skill set that we all need to continue to work on a little bit. Seems like it might have been, along with your business background, a great gateway in terms of the political arena.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about what interested you in getting involved in the Township of Union and ultimately trying to pursuing elective office?
Sure. I'll say this, right? Urban planning is all about people, and actually so is public service. So it just made sense. I've written a lot of master plans and redevelopment plans and different type of planning documents, and some of them have been shelved. And usually it's because, not that it was a bad plan, but it's because the political will just wasn't there to implement them. And so, working with elected officials on a regular basis, it just made sense. How do I enter an arena, or why shouldn't I enter an arena where, I'm working for the public good? I have the background, again, engagement. And in this case, we have support to really move forward different types of revitalization efforts.
So you look at revitalization, you do things like this. What, if you don't mind me asking, what led you to becoming, ultimately pursuing elected office here in the township, and, the background and those sort of things?
So, born and raised Union, right? And planning for so many other communities, and watching my community grow, I wanted to be part of that. And I figured I had the best skill sets to approach the town and offer services. And so I was fortunate. I served on the planning board, which I really, really loved. It was a great experience working with others, some who had, institutional knowledge that I didn't know about as a resident in Union. So it puts you on a different platform. It gives you information that otherwise you wouldn't have known. And it opens doors and opportunities for you to really bring your skill sets to the forefront. So for me, it was, how do I essentially use planning as my platform to help enhance the town that I live in?
Okay. So you win election.
Yes.
You're part of the governing body after a planning board experience and all the other things that go into our community. And ultimately, if I understand it correctly, the governing body chooses to elect you mayor.
Correct.
All right. So you're the leader of the Township of Union. Can you talk about that experience, whether it's in kind of some of the milestones and things? And I know you served as mayor in an incredibly difficult time.
Yes. I will say serving as mayor, it's a great experience, but it also makes you realize that, you're the CEO of the town, right? So whether it's a line item in a budget, whether there's community crisis, whether there's, need for additional services that may not exist, you're the face that goes along with that. And so you really have to wake up every day reminding yourself, like, you're a public servant. So it's less about, it can't be self-serving. You have to put your ego to the side. And it's really about, how do you move the ball to, the next field, essentially.
Did you have to build consensus among the other members of the committee as opposed to, say, being like the elected mayor, that you had to work with the others?
Absolutely. And they were phenomenal. I'll say that. We all come with different skill sets. And just like on the county commission, I feel like, we all have a different perception of what things should and should not look like. But we were very instrumental at, establishing that level of consensus. I think we respected each other's backgrounds, and we have, our personalities were supplemental in a sense. So we complemented each other, and it worked out well. So everybody contributed their ideas, and as a result, we were able to move things forward.
Building consensus, being an active listener.
Absolutely.
So I want to particularly ask you about two of those milestones, and would love if you want to talk about more. One is you served during COVID.
Yes.
Which was an incredibly difficult time, and love for you to expand upon those thoughts. And then after that, would love for you to talk about the master planning experience, the community engagement. But let me ask you about just to talk about the difficulties of being the township leader that you mentioned, CEO, I think is the term you used, during COVID.
That was extraordinary. It's clearly a situation that, we didn't see coming. But engaging, understanding the township that you live in, understanding the needs of the residents, being responsive. I mean, every day we did, news broadcasts to just let people know what's going on in the town. Our focus primarily was on vulnerable communities, right? And who is that? That's, special needs. That's senior citizens. That's our veterans. That's business owners, families that need assistance, right? And so we made it a priority to ensure that we had services and resources to help them on a day-to-day basis.
Refresh me here, but I know that, for example, with the health department and the continuing challenges, I think about your updates.
Yeah.
And in a time of crisis in our community, that there was a lot of that. And I can't help but think about the partnerships along the way. I mean, many of us in the Township of Union recognize the work at Kane in particular, which was done under your leadership. Could you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, there was a lot of coordination from the federal to the state levels to our local institutions like Kane. Kane, they served as the hub for a resource that everyone needed for vaccinations. We coordinated with the county to ensure that, people were able to go to Kane and get vaccinations. We worked with state agencies. So every day we did news notifications. Every Friday we had, live stream Facebooks, and we brought people from state and local and county levels to our constituents, essentially, so they can understand and hear what was going on. We wanted to make sure, essentially, that no one was in the dark, because that was a really scary time. And so it was imperative that, we gave them the information that they needed to process. A lot of issues were going on, whether it was with physical health or with mental health crisis. Being locked in a home, 24/7 can be a bit arduous, on people and on families. And so our job, the way we looked at it was, we have to give them some kind of reprieve, and that comes in the form of information. It comes in the form of services and direction.
Yeah. People want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's as much as you try, the more information you get out to folks, the more comfortable they feel.
Yeah.
Because public service is really just about trying to do the right thing, right?
Exactly.
Which leads me to the master planning.
Yes.
All right. Such an important document, so unknown, but given your business background, your educational experience, and the way you brought that to the township, can you expand upon that a little bit?
Sure. Something I'm very proud of. We had an award-winning master plan, which was wonderful. It was roughly about 28 years old. With master plans, understand this. There are reexaminations that are done, and those reexaminations can be done periodically, which Union did. But just creating a brand new master plan to really articulate the vision for the next 10 to 20 years is something that had not been done yet. And so we took it upon ourselves to, really go out in the community and really see, we realized the community was changing. And we wanted to better understand, what are your needs? What do you want to see? How do you want Union to look? Not necessarily in, 2020, but in 2030 and in 2040 and beyond. And so it was imperative that we put those different elements in place. So community engagement was key. We went out and spoke to, all the different members in our community in different districts throughout Union Township. And we really got great feedback and great participation. It was I'll say this, right? For me, it was just kind of like effortless, right? It was, going back to the active listening, understanding people. It was enlightening in some cases because, people bring things to the forefront that otherwise they wouldn't bring because we went to them. They didn't come to us. And I find that a lot of residents and constituents, they're a little nervous. Coming to town hall could be a little intimidating. And so they may not participate in township committee meetings, et cetera. But if you go to them in their backyards and their neighborhoods, whether it's, via survey or in person, you'll find that people open up.
That's great. And you found that in this case.
Yes, we did.
And that input became part of the master plan?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It definitely informed the next steps for, the next 10 years. And so, we found whether it was about physical development or whether it was about, just environmental issues or, corridors like transportation. Sure. The master plan covers so many different elements: land use, housing, transportation, environmental, recreation. And so in my opinion, we took our time and we did it right.
Good for you.
And I think people appreciated it. And the cherry on top was that the master plan won an award, a state award.
Well, congratulations to you for that. So you're mayor. You're the longest serving female mayor in over 200 years of the township's history, over 2 centuries. And the county commissioner spot opens up. There's a vacancy. I think there was almost a unanimous calling that you may consider it. What made you move? What made you consider that? And then talk about the commissioner role.
The commissioner role, very different from mayor, but I'll say that being mayor prepared me for that. How? Because, when you're mayor of a town the size of Union, which is not a small town.
Second largest in the county.
Yeah, absolutely. Second largest in the county. You know the streets, you know the people, you understand the local needs. You're engaging on a daily basis, not just, 9 to 5, 24 hours whenever you're outdoors, et cetera. On a county level, it's a little different, right? But let me go back a minute. As a mayor, we had the relationships with the county, and so we know what they brought to town, and we know what we needed and what we didn't need from them. So stepping into that commissioner role allowed me the opportunity to look at things a little differently. Now it's 21 municipalities, over 600,000 people versus 60,000. And it was a good balance, bringing the planning background, bringing understanding of how municipalities work, understanding that needs are very different, right? So Union's needs may be very different from Linden's needs, and Hillside's needs may be different from New Providence. And so it becomes going back to the active listening, having those conversations, those very honest conversations, and seeing how, as a commissioner, we can bring resources to municipalities to help them deal with their issues.
Well, you don't have to comment on this, but I'll say this. In your term there, as the second largest municipality, I think there's general consensus that the board wasn't paying attention to all its constituents, certainly those that live in this township's borders. And today, I mean, I can't help but notice Lightning Brook Park is available. Zimmerman Park's been improved. There's a new park facility coming down on Green Lane. You don't have to comment on this because my premise is there. But I think it's important for folks that can hear our voice to understand that when someone comes from a community, no matter what they do, they drive through it, they understand it. And it's nice to have an advocate that's able to produce results.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
I'll leave it at that. It's nice to see the neglect end. I'll say that candidly. You don't. I wouldn't put you in that spot. But I do want to kind of, as we move towards a conclusion here, I also know that you're part of the TPA. Is that right?
North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority.
Okay. Yeah. And you have a role there?
I do. So I'm the second vice president, or vice chair, actually. And I oversee I chair the economic and planning division. Okay. And so it's great opportunity. I served as an alternate for the last 2 years, and then this year stepped into the second vice chair role. They're doing some really great things. And my intention, quite honestly, is North Jersey NJTPA offers a lot of programs and services and grants, both federal and state. And my intention is to bring that to the municipalities that the county serves. Interestingly enough, NJTPA has been around for decades, but a lot of the municipalities just aren't aware of the services and the programmatic efforts that they bring. So that's my goal.
So much going on.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what does Women's History Month mean to you?
It's an opportunity to identify women across the board, not just professional women, but, grandmas and mothers. And for me, it's, they always say it takes a village, right? But there's, in my opinion, there's always a matriarch in that village. And so for me, Women's History Month is sort of a nod, a recognition. And I always say this even about Black History Month. It shouldn't just be for the month of March. It should be all year long. But I recognize it as a way to sort of highlight, go the extra mile, do the extra effort that, you wouldn't do in the other months, just to acknowledge the women in your lives that have made such an impact on who you are today.
Well, we've had the good fortune of talking to a woman who's made such an impact here in the Township of Union, continues to make one in the County of Union, continues to be a business success that inspires others, and certainly has so much more to give.
Thank you.
It has been an absolute honor to speak with Commissioner Michèle Delisfort today. Thank you for sharing some time with us.
Of course, anytime.
And we will see you next time for another Cup of Joe.
That's a wrap on this episode of A Cup of Joe, hosted by Senator Joseph Cryan. Thanks for watching, and until next time,